The US has seized 2 oil tankers attempting to escape Venezuela's blockade, including one registered to Russia. Authorities claim the vessel was breaching sanctions and shipping Iranian oil. It's the latest escalation between the US and Venezuela as the Trump administration ramps up its control of the sale of Venezuelan oil. US Vice President JD Vance has declared the move provides leverage for the US against its opponents.
It does demonstrate American military excellence, which makes people afraid to cross us in the future. The way that we control Venezuela is we control the purse strings, we control the energy resources, and we tell the regime, you're allowed to sell the oil so long as you serve America's national interest.
Moscow has demanded Washington release the Russian citizens believed to be on board one of the tankers. For more analysis, I'm joined now by ANU Strategic and Defence Studies Centre visiting fellow Dr Matthew Sussex. Thanks for your time today. I want to start with this tanker. What do you think the fallout is likely to be here? Is Russia going to respond? Does this play out potentially in Ukraine?
Yeah, look, that's a really interesting question. On the one hand, I don't think that there's an awful lot that Russia can do. This is a tanker that has long been a problem for the West in terms of running all sorts of things from oil, but also potentially guns to Iran and on behalf of Hezbollah. In fact, it's been under sanctions since 2024. And it's only in the last month that it's emerged as a Russian-flagged tanker. So I think what Moscow was trying to do was say, well, if we put these shadow fleets that ship Russian oil and Venezuelan oil and all sorts of other things under Russian control, then the US won't board them or stop them. And that clearly is not the case. So absent sort of complaints in terms of violations of international law, I don't think Putin really has too much that he can do. In terms of how this plays out in Ukraine, I think perhaps it depends very much on whether the US is going to start seizing other tankers, because there are a lot of them that are transiting the world selling Russian oil to dodge sanctions. And if that happens, then Putin will probably calculate that the impact on the Russian economy will be such that perhaps he needs to accelerate his campaign in Ukraine.
And Dr Sussex, give us a sense of how successful Russia has been able to be at evading sanctions. When this war first broke out, there had been that concerted effort from the US and European allies to essentially try and isolate Russia, punish it financially, but nonetheless, Putin's still managing to make advances in Ukraine.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, the success of the shadow tankers has been quite significant in just dodging sanctions. The Russians have been ramping up oil sales to China, as we know, and also ramping up oil sales to India in order to make up the difference of the West basically getting out of the business of buying Russian oil. So it has been effective in driving the Russian war economy. And contributing towards, the gains that it's been making in Ukraine.
We enter 2026 with still incredible uncertainty over whether there is any chance of a big peace deal being struck between Ukraine and Russia. The talks ongoing. I saw the US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff meeting with the Ukraine's president. We saw this big meeting in Paris yesterday, the coalition of the willing coming together to try and reach what it will look like on the other side of a peace deal. What stood out to you in terms of what was agreed?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that came out was that there was a very firm sense of European desire to give security guarantees to Ukraine. In particular, France and the United Kingdom saying that they were going to establish military hubs on Ukrainian soil. And also, I think the second thing was the agreement by the US, even though it was watered down a bit from what the Europeans originally wanted, agreement that they would provide, intelligence support, perhaps drones, perhaps also some logistics support in order to provide that sort of deterrence against future attack if, in fact, there's a peace deal. And I think that that's probably acceptable to Kiev, to Ukraine. Whether it's acceptable to Vladimir Putin, look, I really have my doubts, simply because Putin gives as one of the reasons that he invaded Ukraine concern about NATO troops being close to Russia's border. And in a post-conflict situation, this would mean that NATO troops were very much close to Russia's borders. So it may in fact be a non-starter to him. And if that's the case, then the war just continues, I'm afraid.
Yeah, for Australia's side of things here, there has been talk last year about a potential multilateral deployment. No commitment at this stage from Australia. Is that likely something that would be requested of allies in the Indo-Pacific?
Yeah, well, look, one thing that we're doing, of course, is in terms of our foreign policy, is really amping up our cooperation with the European Union. On the one side, a free trade deal, and on the other one, a deal over sort of strategic and defence relations. And I think probably there would be kind of an expectation in Brussels that, well, if Australia is going to expect, close relations with the EU, the ability to buy advanced European defence tech, and also have European military assets in our own region contributing towards stability in the region, because it's very much one riven by major power contest, then Australia should probably, give a bit the other way. What form that takes, though, is something that needs to play out. We have been providing, for instance, a wedge-tail aircraft to do surveillance and monitoring. Might well be that that's part of the ask. Might also be, of course, that Australian ADF service personnel who have been training Ukrainian fighters, soldiers, will be asked to continue that job, and that's probably something that certainly both the current Albanese government and the coalition would probably quite happy to do.
Yeah. Dr. Matthew Sussex, always appreciate your analysis. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Trudy.